kinds of efforts that you have to put in? Is there a way that you can quantify it or describe the difference in what the ad campaign is now because of these challenges?
Okay, thanks for that question. I'm going to pivot a little bit behind me and ask Kendall if she could just briefly talk about the differences between 2010 and 2020 when it comes to the campaign as a whole, and how in the new environment that we're in today, we've had to maybe punch something up. Can you touch on that just a little bit?
So there are multiple differences between 2010 and 2020. First and foremost, the landscape out there is completely different. Mistrust in government is much higher, and just the desire not to complete surveys. That said, we have included in our advertising messaging that encourages people to respond. We, again, as Ali mentioned earlier, we focus on the benefits. But we do know that reaching people is much difficult than it was in 2010. The media landscape again has changed. The media is more fragmented. We are doing much more digital media than we did in 2010. As a matter of fact, digital is probably about 30% of our media buy at this point. So we are looking at reaching people where they are in the media that serves them most, using the messaging that is most desirable for them.
Thanks for that line of questioning. And we'll take our next question over here on the left.
Yeah, and thank you for doing this. Maria Peña with Telemundo Network. So I have follow-ups also to the citizenship question. So to counter the chilling effect that citizenship question may have had, what are you guys doing, to engage Hispanic advocacy organizations locally and nationally to encourage people to participate? And two, what kind of training are you doing with Hispanic members of the community who are bilingual and can reach out to those households that may be not wanting to participate? So one question on training and one on engaging Hispanic groups nationwide. Thank you.
Thanks for that line of questioning. I'm going to direct that to Maria Malagon.
Yes, hi. Thank you for your question. So actually, we have a very strong partnership program both at the national and the local level. At the local level, we have hired over 1,500 partnership specialists. They are mostly bilingual and mostly represent even further than we have for the campaign. For the campaign, we're using English plus 12 other languages. At the local level, probably we have over 100 languages represented. For the Hispanic community, that means that we have several bilingual in Spanish partnership specialists who have been working for about 3 years now in the community with community organizations and also in partnership with our national partnerships program, working with the chapters of those national partnerships partners to work in the community, train. We have been participating in several activities, trainings, and one-to-one with community leaders. And I really feel that for those communities that are more afraid, that has been very impactful and probably can be even more impactful than paid advertising. I strongly believe on what we have been doing with paid advertising in terms of messaging for this community, but we start our efforts with local Hispanic communities way long ago in what we call our strategic education phase. We did a bunch of work with our statistics in school program, which is bilingual this time. We have done work with social media in Spanish, with earned media, but definitely local partnerships is what is being key in these communities.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Our next question over here on the right.
Thank you. KT Wang with NTD TV. I just want to follow up on your engagement with the local community. Other than this advertisement, we have seen like 10 years ago, you did participate a lot of community events and engage with a lot of community different organizations. Can you explain about your plan this year? How is it different with the 10 years ago? Thank you.
Thank you for that line of questioning about community involvement and things that are being done at the local level.
Let me just point out that we are so pleased with the partnership efforts with all the partners across the nation, and we have these partnership specialists. This decennial census, we will have more than double the number of partnership specialists, more than 1,500. The last decennial census, we had more than 700. And in addition, I want to thank the Congress and the administration for supporting this even further. We're going to have about 4,000 additional staff helping these people, so we will be increasing the people available, particularly during the self-response period, and getting them to answer the census. We will have approximately 7 times as many people as we had in the past decennial census. And I've been across the country to many states, many more yet to come, and I've seen in the states that I've been to, these partnership specialists are people that many of whom have worked in previous censuses and have worked with the Census Bureau. They're doing a fantastic job. When I go into the state capitals or meet with a governor, they recognize our partnership specialists by face and by name. And they're working each and every day. Most recently, I got back from Florida, both South Florida, Central Florida, Northern Florida, and our partnership specialists are doing a fantastic job. So again, there are ambassadors working directly with those communities and the partnering organizations. We're very pleased, and I know Al Fontenot might have some additional specifics with his many years of experience on this.
Thank you very much, Director Dillingham. One of the things that is very important is our partners themselves. We have over 170,000 partners, and we will have 300,000 partners before we are rolling into the census. Our partners have already had over 120,000 events or activities that they have conducted out in the local communities. They are the trusted voices. They are parts of the community. They know the specific needs of those communities. The director mentioned the 8,000 complete count committees. Complete count committees are organized to say what are the specific needs of our community so that we can get a complete count in our community. Those complete count committees are in the process of organizing rallies, organizing events, putting signage on trash trucks if they're municipal complete count committees. State complete count committees are very actively funding the activities that are going on within their state. So we find that in addition to our own staff, we have partners and complete count committees actively making a much larger impact throughout the community.
I also wanted to add the partners themselves have built great networks, both at the national and at the state and local level, to coordinate on activities and make sure that the resources are getting where they are. I want to particularly highlight the role that a lot of philanthropic organizations have played in making sure that activity gets funded through community-based outreach organizations and state-based outreach organizations as well.
Thanks for that. And we're going to go to our next question on the left.
Hi, Hansi Wang with NPR News. How many ads that are designed to reach Latinx, Latino communities are in Spanish, and how many ads are in English?
Thanks for that question about ads in language.
Or if you can give us a sense of a share, a percentage, if you don't know the exact number.
Well, I'll direct that to one of our Team Y&R members.
Yeah, hi, thanks for the question. So it's hard to quantify at this moment in time, and we are still producing as we go along. Right now, we have done a significant number for both Spanish and English, reaching the Hispanic community, both English and bilingual audiences. As we go along, we're going to continue to create more content, but know that we are absolutely reaching both audiences. Just can't give you an exact percentage at this time.
Okay. If I can use my follow-up question, can anyone give us an update on the status of R.R. Donnelly's printing contract? Are the paper forms that Director Dillingham mentioned earlier that is an option for respondents to fill out, are those paper forms, is that printing complete? And does the Bureau have any resources to print any additional forms in case there is an increased demand for paper forms, people don't want to respond online or by phone?
Thanks for that. I'm going to direct that to Al Fontenot.
Yes, R.R. Donnelly has completed printing the forms that we're going to be using in the census. They're in the process now of addressing specific mailings They're in the process of packing out and loading materials within the envelopes. They have additional printing capacity if necessary, but they have completed printing the forms at this point in time. And we have printed over 120 million forms at this point in time. So we believe they have a sufficient quantity for anyone who will want to respond to the census on paper.
Thank you, Mr. Fondo. If I could just, does the Bureau have resources to print additional paper forms if there is indeed an increased demand for paper forms as we go forward?
R.R. Donnelly, our printer, has completed printing using their press capacity to print what we have up until now, so they have additional capacity going forward if we need to do that.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that. And we'll take our next question on the right side.
Hi, my name is Jerusalem Solomon from Arlington County Government, and I'm wondering if these ads are aligned to a national editorial calendar. Is there some sort of steady drumbeat or cadence that jurisdictions may be able to align themselves with?
So the broadest levels of the editorial calendar were mentioned during the presentation, so that's that we're right now entering into the awareness phase, where the goal is to educate people about the importance of the census. As the online instrument opens up in March, we're going to enter into the motivation phase, where we are going to be much more focused, and I suspect partners like yourself and others, on making sure that we are driving people to respond online, on the phone, or through the mail. And then afterwards, we move into what we call the reminder phase, which is very important. Is sort of the message there is twofold. One, to let people know that they're going to have census takers in their community and to encourage cooperation, but also, and this is an improvement and something that's unique over 2010, to let people know that they can still go online, or they can still call, they can still respond directly to the census. And that was one of the biggest, productivity increases that we saw during our 2018 Providence test too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. On the left?
Hi, I'm Janet Adamy from the Wall Street Journal. I have a follow-up question to Tara's question and then a new question. Kendall, do I understand correctly that you said that across the board you would say it's harder to reach people in 2020 than it is in 2010? And if that is correct, what besides increased mistrust in government or declining participation in surveys makes it harder?
I think it's just the overall apathy of participation. Declining, survey rates have been declining every year, but we're hoping that our campaign, which is extremely robust and really steeped in research, will encourage people to respond at a much greater rate.
Okay, and for Director Dillingham, can you tell me what percentage of people at this point you expect will respond online, and how, if at all, that has changed over time throughout your planning and since the initial testing in Rhode Island?
Sure, we're very encouraged, and when we did what we called the end-to-end test in Rhode Island in 2018, we found that even without the media campaign, we found that most people who were self-responding chose to do it on the internet. And then I was somewhat surprised, but only 6 to maybe close to 7% decided to use the phone, and the others selected to do it on paper. So we think that this new technology is a quantum leap in conducting the 2020 census. I am very aware of concerns about things people call the digital divide. We wish that everyone in this country had connectivity. So we're working with those communities that may have limited connectivity, and we praise our partners, some of whom are here today. The American Library Association is opening its doors across our nation. Other groups and local governments, the City of Baltimore, we have our partnership specialist here, who now for the state of Maryland. And when I went to the City of Baltimore, there was concern that we did not have a storefront operation. And in fact, when I drove around through the hard-to-count areas of Baltimore, we identified 80 locations available just with the libraries and the recreation centers. This new technology, I think, is so important and makes such an important difference for much of the nation, not just efficiency, but for reaching the hard-to-count communities. We can now take the laptops and the cell phones and go directly into those communities. We can go to the soup kitchens. We can go under the overpasses. We can go wherever these hard-to-count populations are with these new technologies, and we will have 7 times as many people available to do that. So we're very pleased. I think it's a quantum leap forward. I support and praise the Congress for supporting our special mobilization initiative, and these new technologies will make a difference. And it is my hope, because we now have the capacity to increase the self-response rates in every state, and I hope that by working together, we can do that. It is a national census. We've got partners everywhere, and the new technologies that have made this nation so competitive in the world can be applied and should be applied to the 2020 census.
Just to go back to the initial question, what percentage of people do you expect will respond online?
Well, and I could say in Rhode Island, Al, you want to say, give the percentage?
Yeah, we believe that 60 to 65% of the self-responders will respond online.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for that. And on the right?
I'm Jordan Bennett Begay with Indian Country Today. So I was wondering, why is the nation given a 4-month ad campaign, whereas in Alaska, or specifically Tooksuk Bay, a U-Pick community, a hard-to-count community, why are ads running only a month or less?
Question about ads. Remote Alaska. I'm going to send that to TDY. I mean, Team YNR, sorry.
That's okay. Good afternoon. My name's Michael Gray, and I'm with G&G. The Alaska is actually getting ads early to cover the early enumeration, but they will also get, as you saw on that calendar, ads starting in January, February, March, April, May, June as well. But the stuff that you're seeing now or probably asking about is just to support the early enumeration efforts.
And then last week, there at the congressional hearing, there was a talk of a delay in hiring. So I was wondering, what is the status of hiring in Alaska, or specifically Tooksuk Bay?
For that, I'm going to direct that question to Tim Olson, our Associate Director for Field Operations.
Thank you for the question, and I'm really excited to tell you, in Alaska, we're beginning the very first enumeration, as I believe Dr. Dillingham said earlier, Tuesday. And we have already hired all of the people in Alaska that will be working on the village enumeration. So we're ready to roll. They've been trained, and we're ready to roll. Speaking from a national perspective, though, we are functioning within an environment of a 50-year low for unemployment. So recruiting is not an easy task in this environment where most people have jobs. And I'm really proud to tell you that as of yesterday morning, we are now at well over 1.7 million applicants that are in our pool. And so we need less than 1 million additional applicants. And right now, in the last approximate 2 weeks, through today, we are generating nearly 25,000 new applicants every single day. And so that permits us, if that trend continues, in March, when we begin the job offering for census taker jobs throughout the country, we will have well enough applicants in the pool that we're able to hire what we need at the local level.
Thanks for that, Tim. And we'll go over to the left for the next question.
Wendy Jones, NBC. Is there a standard definition or one that you use for hard-to-count communities? What does that phrase mean?
Thanks for that question on hard-to-count communities. The standard definition for hard-to-count communities. I'm going to throw that over to Ali Ahmad.
So there's not a single standard definition for hard-to-count communities. You can think of it as a matrix of conditions that makes it difficult to fully enumerate a community, whether it's the folks there have a language barrier in certain, especially certain ethnic enclaves, so they're hard to interview. They may be hard to reach because there's gates to communities, gates to buildings. There's a mix of things that makes a community hard to count. There's also conditions within the home that may make it difficult to fully enumerate that house, and that makes it a hard to count community as well. One of the things that you saw in our ad campaign and we discussed earlier was the undercount of young children. That's children ages 0 up till 5. So it's children that generally aren't in schools. And what makes them hard to count is they are often more likely to live in complex households. So one of the main focuses of our campaign is to tell people to count everybody under their roof. And we really put that front and center in this campaign as opposed to some of the prior campaigns, because we want to make sure that people understand that the important thing to do is to count the young child in your home, does not change any other, status that they may have, and to make sure that you count everybody in the community. But there's not a single definition of hard to count. It's really more the web of conditions that might make it hard to get a full and complete count, and the ad campaign is designed to address as much of that as possible.
Thanks for that. To the right, next question.
Hello, James Pollard with Medill News Service. Thanks for hosting this. I'm curious, how does the ad campaign seek to specifically target the homeless audience? You mentioned a partnership with the American Library Association. Are there any other partnerships or strategies?
Yes, to talk about homeless enumeration and ads.
Thank you for that question on homeless. One of our most important ways of reaching the homeless population is working closely with community organizations that provide services to the homeless, working with soup kitchens, working with facilities that provide overnight sleeping accommodations with the homeless, and reaching out to them that way. So more than the ad campaign, we reach out to the homeless through our partnership and our community engagement activities, and specially tailored operations that are tailored for their specific conditions.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
Let me just add, and we have a lot of people here that are very qualified in addressing some of these questions, and particularly hard to count. And the head of our field operations is here, and he tells me about his personal experiences in going out in urban areas, going out in pairs with flashlights, going to those areas that may be under the overpasses, et cetera, and making sure these people get counted. And again, that's why technology can be so important, particularly in the self-response phase. We want to make sure, and I'm seeing it in rural communities and urban communities, our partners, as Al said, are so critical. Keep in mind, and that's why I keep repeating, this is a national census. We're very geared up and we're recruiting to fill our positions, and we will hire between 300,000 and 500,000 people. But an equal number to that are the number of partners representing organizations, businesses, nonprofits, houses of worship, and other partners that we have across this nation. So for every individual working for the Census Bureau, even on a temporary job, we have across this country engagements with these partners representing millions of people.
Thank you for that, Director Gillingham. Next question.
Yeah, Eric Katz with Government Executive. I wanted to follow up with some of the hiring stats that we just heard about. Of the 500, potentially up to 500,000 people that we're bringing on temporarily, Census is bringing on, how many have been hired already, and where does that stand with the target? And once you start really ramping up in March, how confident are you that that process will be able to move quickly enough with the background checks and security clearances and things like that?
Thank you for that question again about hiring. I'm going to again direct this to our Associate Director for Field Operations, Tim Olson. We touched a little bit earlier about hiring.
Thank you for the question. Dear to my heart. So right now, we have well over 1,500 partnership specialists that are on board working full-time. We've got over 5,000 recruiters, which are temporary workers that are working throughout the nation. We have 248 area census offices that are staffed with support staff and management teams that are actively working with the infrastructure to support the field operations. I mentioned earlier the remote Alaska enumeration. All of those staff are hired and ready to go to work the moment we begin the enumeration this coming Tuesday. Our area census offices are actively right now hiring census field supervisors for our update leave operation, which occurs in March. And they're just about to begin hiring the census takers for that component of the census. And in March, they will start hiring the non-response follow-up enumerators, census takers. There's a big difference in the clearance process for our temporary staff than there has been for our, full-time office-type staff. It's a fingerprint. If they have a clean background, we know that they are cleared, automated in an automated fashion, usually in 5 to 10 minutes. And that allows us, so when we are hiring for the field jobs, if somebody's got a clean record, bingo, we can onboard them literally within a matter of days. So I'm feeling very confident the fact that we are getting such a large applicant pool right now, that as we begin that hiring process, our field operations are really going to be swimmingly successful. I do want to mention too, we've talked about partnership, over 170,000 organizations right now that are partnering actively with us. In our applicant pool right now of 1.7 million, actually more than 1.7 million people, more than 20% of those applicants are bilingual, the majority being bilingual in English and Spanish. But if you parse out the actual languages that are represented in that in that applicant pool, it's over 450 languages and dialects that they represent, which is huge. Obviously we're going to hire at the local neighborhood level, and there are languages, a lot of languages spoken throughout the United States. So we're feeling pretty good. Anyway, I'm going to turn the mic over.
Thanks for that, Tim. And we'll take next question on the right-hand side.
Thank you very much, and congratulations for wonderful work you've been doing. My name is Sean Ling with WQR Radio in Maryland. So my question is regarding about actually media landscape. So based on Hoover Institute report on 2018, so right now the Chinese American media market actually changed a lot because the Chinese communist regime have heavily influenced this community. More than 90% of media has been influenced, controlled by the communist regime. So I'm just wondering, in the Census Bureau's research study, is the national security actually one of the elements that you need to consider? Also in the hiring process, how do you exclude some of the people loyal to the Chinese regime and being hired as your, temporary employees?
Thanks for that line of questioning. So it's twofold, about hiring, but also about the ads that we're producing. I'll direct the question to Kendall.
So in terms of the media that we're purchasing, all of the media, one of the requirements for the media that we purchase is that it has to have a U.S. remit to address. So we've been working directly with Team Y&R. Actually, for clarity, the media purchases are done by Team Y&R. They evaluate the proposals that were submitted, and then they came to the Bureau with a recommendation, which we approved, and therefore we have a final media buy. In terms of the creative itself, the creative is speaking to the messaging that we found through our research that was most appropriate for each particular audience. So one ad is not the answer for every audience. You have to take the messaging that is more palatable to the audiences that you're speaking to and create your ads around that. So for the Chinese audiences, we have ads that are specific to the Chinese audience. We use they're culturally relevant, they're created in language, and they speak directly to the audience.
Thank you for that. And looks like we have 2 more questions, then we're going to wrap. So we'll take this one over here on the left.
Good morning. I am Olga Imbaquingo of El Tiempo Latino. I am wondering if this advertisement campaign will address the factors of fear and intimidation that especially the immigrant community have been affected with the debate of the citizenship. And that is important to know because still many immigrants believe the question will be included in the census, and they are telling they are not going to answer that question, or they are not going to participate in the census.
Thank you for that line of questioning. I'm going to direct that question to one of our members of Team Y&R.
Hi, I'm Carlos Alcazar, Culture One World. Thanks for that very important question. Absolutely very important to address the question that you mentioned. After much of the research, as was mentioned earlier, we did find obviously that there is a concern, but we are, and we have taken that into account and focused that in all of our work. You will see we are addressing that it is safe, that their information is safe, and that their personal information will be kept safe. And so you will see that across all of the work. We have some work that is actually very focused on speaking about that particular topic, but we also found that it was important to our audience through the research to know that what the benefits were, so that it was important for them to answer the census. As soon as they found out how important it was for themselves and their family members and their community and the future, and they saw that importance, they were even more motivated to answer. And then finally, it wasn't only important to talk to them about the safety and confidentiality and the importance, but also how easy it is for them to respond. So the work will also share with them how simple it is and how easy it is for them to respond with the various modes. All of that is incorporated across the work.
Thank you. I have another question regarding to the employment. What are the workers are needed for the census, and what are the most important requirements for the people interested in applying?
Real brief, I'll have Tim just talk a little bit about the requirements for the hiring.
Notice Michael said real brief. So to be selected, you must be 18 years of age or older at the time of selection. You must be a U.S. citizen. There are no other job requirements such as education or prior work experience. Successfully pass a background check, and that really sums it up. Was that brief enough?
Thank you. Yes. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
And our last question on the left-hand side, is that a question? No? Yes. Yes, sir.
Hi, good morning. My name is Chang Lee. I'm a reporter from the Korea Times. Thank you very much for putting Korean language in the census questions. I have that you guys have 13 languages, and then Korean language was included. Thanks for that. And then my question is, I'm a little afraid that since citizens' question on the 2020 census could have a negative impact for non-citizen population. I think many other reporters also mentioned. And then I want to know how you guys think this gonna impact non-citizen population, because non-citizen population they worrying about some worrying about deportation. If they fill out the question, if they are non-citizen, maybe they can be attacked by maybe U.S. Immigrant Bureau. And the second question is, in case of Korean community, there are around 1.5 million Korean people living here in America. That's the Census Bureau's statistics. But Korean government always saying 2.5 million people living here. So many Koreans, sometimes they ask to me, which answer is right? 1.5 million or 2.5 million, because the gap is too big. And then I want to have this answer from, Director Stephen Dillingham. Thank you.
Well, let me say, first of all, we have the people here that can explain to you the wording of the question and their experience on how people answer it. And there is a very important and rich history on the design of the census, and we're continually considering recommendations and thoughts and soliciting feedback. So if you have specific concerns on the wording for any community, we hope you'll talk with our staff here, and we will explain how we do that. With regard to citing varying statistics, that's a prime example of how important it is that we get everyone counted. There are populations that experience an undercount. There always have been. And I know you have a special concern with your population, and I've heard that concern before. We've all heard those concerns before. And let me just provide a little bit of historical framework. One that we hear the most about, and it is one of the most underreported, even though it's way down in the single digits, nationally it's tremendous, and that is the undercount of children. And we go back historically, and this was a problem in 1790. It's been a problem in every census since. Some of the reasons probably have changed over time, but households, for all sorts of reasons, Ali referred to some of those reasons. It could be that you feel that maybe there are people living in your household that shouldn't be there, that the landlord or the public housing authority might be concerned about. There may be people living in your household that you're not their legal guardian, and you feel that, well, I really shouldn't report these individuals. And sometimes there are other arrangements and complexities with the family, etc. So I'm just using that as an example with your particular group as well. Help us to understand why there is an undercount, and help us and join with us in making sure we get a complete count. So we want everyone in your community counted. It is very important, as you point out, and if there are some discrepancies and if you're aware of the undercount, we want to work with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Director. Before we wrap, I'd like to thank everyone here, everyone on the stage, and everyone seated here that has worked diligently to get the 2020 Census Campaign to where it is today. If you want to stay involved and plugged into the 2020 Census Campaign, I encourage you to follow us and to visit 2020census.gov. As well, I'd like to invite everyone to experience the showcase of the campaigns and more artwork and deliverables that are downstairs from our creatives. Representatives from Team Y&R, they'll be down there as well to answer your questions, and Census Bureau staff will be on hand as well in the exhibits to answer your questions. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone again for joining us today and wish you well. 2020 Census.